The next speaker is Jeffrey Piper from Chicago. And Chicago, again, is one of our most popular centers. Interesting that this year we had to reschedule the Chicago breakfast because it coincided with the Salesforce.com Dreamworld event. And it seemed like Chicago was going to be completely evacuated as far as I could tell. We couldn't get anybody to show up until we moved it by about a week, and then it sold out instantly. So my guess is there's a lot of support for Salesforce coming out of Chicago. So Jeffrey, are you there?
I am. Thanks, Joe.
Terrific, Jeff. Off you go.
Yeah, so super group of folks here in Chicago. There's probably 20, 25 kind of core PS executives that come together on a quarterly basis. About 2/3 of those folks are from software related companies, a third being from kind of service only system integrators, for example. Yeah, hot topic around kind of demand forecasting, resource planning. A lot of good discussion coming out of Chicago back in the fall. And one of the big frustrations for everybody was just the ability to accurately forecast demand. It's seeming that you never have enough resources, or sometimes too many resources. And then sometimes you got people sitting around and you've got resources available, but the skill mix is not good, and so you can't deploy those people into projects because they simply can't do the work. Or in other cases, the people are highly qualified, too qualified, perhaps to perform some of the more mundane tasks. So some of the comments and approaches to managing forecasting demand. Excuse me, and this was brought up earlier, but get your services organization involved in the sales forecasting calls. Some of this is at a very tactical level. Perhaps there's a weekly, bi-weekly sales call where people are going through their pipelines and discussing projects that are coming up, and it's important to know what's on the immediate horizon. Excuse me. To a second point, meet with sales management, right? Let's talk about, at a strategic level, what are the directions that sales is trying to go in, and what is the nature of the projects that might originate from those sales. Get your channel partners involved. We talked a few minutes ago about engaging channel partners. What are their skills? What are they capable of delivering? In some cases, you may have partners that are fully capable of selling and fully implementing your solution with very little support from your services organization. And in other cases, maybe they're a new channel partner or potentially not very skilled in the services area, and you're going to have to support them a fair amount with services. So integrate them into the planning process. Looking at the client type and mix to better align the resources. So rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to need X number of hours or this many bodies to fulfill demand in the next quarter or next period of time, look and say, well, what are the skill sets that are required from these folks to better align with the needs that are going to arise. And then a lot of times there seems to be a challenge with other people in the organization, other management people in other functional areas, not really understanding the cost of maintaining a bench, or in some cases, having resource shortages, and help them understand that cost so that they're more willing to share information they have that will make planning easier in the services organization. Next slide, Joe. Thanks. So, what's wrong with resource shortages? And to some extent, we all like to have a backlog and some shortage, but at some point, that shortage becomes a detriment, and it starts to disappoint customers if they're, making a purchase and then having to wait a month, 2 months, 3 months for the engagement to begin. That's a long time to wait to get value, and customers get upset. Also, you run the risk of burning out the resources. We all want them, highly utilized and very billable, but at some level, they just get tired and fed up and don't want to do travel, don't want to put in the hours. So you've got to kind of manage it on both sides here. Some of the solutions that came out of the breakfast, of course, cross-train, right? And this goes back to kind of the skills mix, but make sure that all the resources are able to perform the broadest set of tasks possible. They're trained very well in not just one domain, but in many. Is there an opportunity to hire part-time and equivalents, PTEs, to fill in from time to time? This might be possible where you've got relatively mundane or repetitive tasks, and part-timers can come in to help. There was also a focus on educating customers, help customers to understand that some periods are peak times and some are non-peak times, and if their work, their enhancement, or their add-on necessarily isn't mission critical, perhaps there's an opportunity to move that project into a period of time when things aren't quite so busy. And to that degree, there's target business segments, right? The construction industry here in Chicago is not so busy in winter, but very busy in spring, summer, and the fall. Schools, educational systems have peaks and valleys. Most industries do, and so perhaps there's an opportunity to target projects into certain segments at certain times to try to level out this the resource leveling. One person also suggested, hey, maybe I can raise prices, but got to be careful here not to conflict with sales, or conversely, maybe decrease prices at certain periods of time when demand is a little bit lower. So playing with the price of services of those resources to incent or disincent people to take advantage of them.
Yeah, Jeff, let me jump in. And when we were going over this yesterday, I made a comment. I've always known salespeople to lower my prices. No, I guess you could get into increased prices, but that, as we said, that's probably more to do with a services-only organization where they are selling skill sets. But in a product company, it's a little bit harder. Would you agree?
I would agree, although we've seen situations where people had examples of kind of price increases, kind of spot price increases when customers had very short timelines. The project's got to start tomorrow and has to be finished on this date, and to compensate for some of that, people charged a premium to kind of offset some of that opportunity cost.
That's true.
If you can get away with it, absolutely.
Yeah, my best experience was in a company where we had tremendous demand, and our resources were booked out 90 days, and basically it'll just allow me to at least defend the pricing. I never had any price erosion. Anytime someone came and asked for a discount, I just did you really ask for that? I mean, why would I take people off a working project to work on a cheaper project? But and you got to be respectful to the customers as well. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So from a planning perspective, one of the keys here was maintaining a good pipeline in good times and in bad. Always having people at kind of different stages of your recruiting pipeline, but doing so with a lot of kind of integrity and transparency in this process, because you may be talking to a candidate just to kind of get a sense of their skills and cultural fit and likes and dislikes and those kinds of things, but there may not be an immediate opportunity today, and it would be disappointing to the candidate to believe that they're in an active recruiting cycle and then find out a few weeks later that really you're just kind of getting to know people and don't have an immediate opening. So be transparent in that process. Where you've got people on the bench, see if there's a way that they can be deployed to internal projects in other departments, and share those resources. There was a lot of conversation about how to engage outsourced third parties or partners, and a lot of concern around, well, how do I control the quality of the deliverable? And the overall comments kind of centered around, well, I'd really like to do the initial implementation, maintain control over architecture and kind of the high-level project management of the projects. But if I'm going to outsource, then I'm looking, to outsource smaller pieces, add-ons, or offshore, kind of more mundane, probably more technical, repetitive technical type tasks. And those were kind of the comments around using third parties to provide additional capacity for your organization. One thing to be mindful of, we had a lot of people that had, kind of road warriors that have been out on the road, 80% of the time. They tend to burn out in relatively, short periods of time, 3 to 5 years. They're kind of done. I've been on the road living in hotels and rental cars and airplanes, and I'd like to have a social life and, visit with my family. Where your business lends itself, look at the college recruiting opportunity. Make sure there's career paths offered. This was mentioned earlier in this session. Is there an opportunity to rotate assignments for some people are out and away from home, and other people are local and can commute. So can you switch these folks out from time to time? And there's also been a lot of use for personality testing, certainly in sales organizations, customer service organizations. But consider the appropriateness of doing personality testing with your services resources as well, to make sure they're a good fit, culturally, for the type of work that you're asking them to do. So those are some of the comments around trying to be a little bit more effective in resource planning.
Great. I've got a couple of comments here, Jeff, but I just want to say, as a courtesy to our attendees, we have quite a big group today. We're right on the hour. We said it would be a 1 hour webinar. So as a courtesy, I just want to give you that time check. We're going to continue though, because we have another presentation. So we'll probably run over about 15 minutes. So anyway, Jeff, regarding the personality test, I was a co-lead for the Raleigh Breakfast, and the folks there use the personality test quite a bit. They made a couple of comments. They said, especially university grads, they get training in all sorts of good technology, but they don't get training in being consultants and customer skills. So we will train them on that, but we have to make sure they have the correct aptitude for that. So all the different folks there, or several different folks, had different interview techniques to ensure that the people that were hiring into services had at least had the aptitude, and then they would take on the training themselves. So quite an interesting comment.
Yeah, I think that was very, very interesting, and I think there were comments that came up in the Chicago breakfast along the lines of some folks have very short, high velocity kinds of implementation cycles, things that just last a few days to a few weeks, and a consultant may have a few of those going on at any given time, and other organizations tend to be on very large projects that are lots and lots of resources that stretch over months or even years, and so thinking about, well, this person's been on one project at a very large consulting firm. Are they appropriate for my high velocity, smaller project firm? They may not be, right? So,
right.
Yeah, important to match that personality with kind of the cultural needs.
Exactly.
Of the job.
Yeah. The other point here is this issue. The topic of college grads came up in virtually every city that we've been in. And again, the comment in Raleigh was from one company that they skipped college recruiting 1 year, and they paid heavily for it in the following years. They just weren't prepared. So obviously you have a combination of hiring veterans and hiring college grads. You got to keep both going. Was their lesson learned.
Yes.
And getting back to partners, there's been a lot of questions. We haven't got a lot. Don't have enough time to answer all the questions, but there have been questions about working with partners. And I'll make this comment. Working with partners is very, very much a corporate cultural thing. One formula may work with one company, may not work with another. It depends on whether your product is a SaaS product, whether it's on-premise, whether your partner is providing domain knowledge or technical expertise, and so forth. In fact, we could probably have a whole webinar on working with partners, because I see this more and more often. So to those folks that are asking those questions here, there's no standard blanket answer. It's really very specific to the environment you're in. Okay, Jeff, great. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks,
to
Joe.
you and the folks in Chicago.